You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. Tonight, folks, I only have 2 words for you. Wake up! Good night. God bless you all. I'll see you tomorrow night. Just joking, folks. But I thought that might get your attention, and I'm sure that it did. Stay tuned. Got one heck of a broadcast tonight. Something that you all need to hear, and I think you're going to be surprised when it's all over and I tell you something else. So, don't go away. I'll be right back.
Barbershop. MC, yeah. They don't know about this. Barbershop. Shop. In case you didn't know who this is, it's the barbershop, the one and only. Crushing all these phonies in the clubs, they my homie. In the streets, they don't know me. They cowards, trying to live a lifestyle that's ours. For the people who live hip-hop, hour after hour, minute by minute. As the seconds tick, I'm wrecking shit. Put it in writing so my seeds can inherit it. The fakes keep fearing it, people keep hearing it. Barbershop MCs freestyling over instruments. Spark a blunt, then an incense. Fix it, to put on the tape, my DJ was missing. Set on the mission, the times I blow kisses. To whack crews I throw disses, cause it's the point they missing. This is what you call the best in the West. Full-fledged hip-hop without the bulletproof vest. See our words of life, breathtaking rhymes, signed in, connected by me, collected MCs, elected by the Crescent Heights officially. See my duty as an MC, from the barbershop, fresh cut to hip-hop, chicks pussy pop to this, while I'm sipping Guinness, clothes smelling like cess without the yes, we bless this. It ain't my fault like Mr. O.C. So intangible, too much to handle. Battlers, that's just a big gamble that you might lose. Fuck it, you will. Tons of guns that kill. This is for real. SK, watch my name ring like AK shot sounds. It's the same thing as heroin. That's why the brain fiend. Haters spotting, train spot, debating on the scheme. To annihilate the number one team. The barbershop got the music, the money, the women. The barbershop got the music, the money, the women. The barbershop got the music, the money, the women. The barbershop got the music, the money, the women. Yo, hitting corners, rolling quick. Barbershop city slicks, that's the name, the type of nigga to blow a nick. To a dub, hit the ball walking in the club. Telly on the rock, tie twisting up a dub. That's in the corner hollowing. Wolves walking through the club, James following. Drub on his neck with the bottling, that's expected. I can't help it if my whole crew's infected with dopeness, it's hopeless. Like Hey Ruth told you to focus. Shots form just like locusts. Out for the kill and the takeover. Covering ground from LA to Dover. The type of cats you could call rovers. We roaming like some wild is foaming. We sick, cause we kick sick ass lyrics. It's contagious, cause my whole crew's outrageous. Barbershop nigga, can't nobody outstage us. Barbershop crew, we got nothing else to do but hit your niggas off with some shit that's brand new. Understand, I'm so hype, man. I don't even need a hype man. Just give me a motherfucking mic stand. The third good martial education. I look forward to taking on the nation with the inspiration. My desperation, my eye examination, concentration, congratulations. Unfortunately, I torture MC like a blitty. I burn a nigga up like a black and middy. Fresh baked breads and vegetables, buttered up delectables. These women we meet wanna get sexual. Heavy drinker, heavy thinker, heroics. Ask the questions you wanna know to the niggas I know it. Half an ounce of Quan one night, blow it. You got the skill, show it. I drink hard liquor and shake up the Moet. Celebrate, toast to the utmost great. Net weight, fish on the plate. Niggas in emergency state, get your weapon. Protect your family and get to steppin'. Barbershop got the music, the money, the women. The barbershop got the music, the money, the women. The barbershop got the music, the money, the women. The barbershop got the music, the money, the women. Got the music, the money, the women. The barbershop got the music, money, women. Barbershop got the music, the money, women. The barbershop got the music.
Ladies and gentlemen, all across this country and around the world, people have bought the scam. They don't believe in law and order anymore. They believe in emotions. They believe in being whipped up into mad hysteria to support whatever cause the lawbreakers, the anarchists, the Nazis want to promote. You want to see a Nazi? You look at the White House. It's just exactly what Hitler did. World War II. He gave an ultimatum to Poland. Poland said, no, we're not going to give you our country. You're not going to come in here and occupy our country with troops, and the troops are going to be immune from prosecution for any crimes they commit. No. He bombed them. Said the same thing to Serbia. They said no, and he bombed them. Said the same thing to France, and they said no, and he bombed them. Said the same thing to England, they said no, and he bombed them. It was all illegal, unlawful. It was against the laws of Germany. It was against international law. It was against the agreements and treaties that Germany had signed. It was against the League of Nations. You all forgot about that, didn't you? It was against everything. But he did it. And that's what Clinton is doing right now. Well, let's call a spade a spade. He is William Jefferson Hitler. Might be the reincarnation. He's in direct violation of the Constitution for the United States of America. To hell with the War Powers Act. Congress has no right. The Constitution gives them no right whatsoever to abdicate their responsibility and hand it to the executive branch. Not for 1 day, not for 60 days, not for 90 days. The War Powers Act is unconstitutional, clear and simple. Only Congress can declare war. Next week, the time limit in the War Powers Act expires. And so unless Congress declares war next week, the bombing has to stop. The bombing has to stop. Also, a motion has been filed in the World Court, bringing to the attention of the world the illegality of the bombing of Yugoslavia by anybody, but especially by the United States of America and Great Britain and NATO. They're in violation of the United Nations Charter. They're in violation of their own treaty, the North Atlantic Treaty. NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is in violation of its own treaty. The United States is in violation of its own Constitution. All of them in violation of the United Nations Charter. All of them. And now next week, the War Powers Act time limit will expire. Tony Blair is screaming to send in ground troops. Today, a Yugoslavian general said, you send in ground troops, you will come to know hell on earth. And I believe him. I believe him. Clinton's up against the wall now with the time limit on the War Powers Act running out. Suit has been filed in the World Court. Also, suit has been filed by a group of lawyers from many different countries with the War Crimes Tribunal. and still Yugoslavia won't give up. How many bombs do they want to drop? Do you realize how many bombs they've dropped, how many people they've killed, the devastation, the destruction that they have wreaked? All in the name of their New World Order and their New World Order police force? Oh, well, we can't stop the bombing because NATO will lose credibility. Hey, up NATO! Screw NATO! Stick it where the sun don't shine, NATO! You're a bunch of thug, criminal, mafia, two-bit hoodlums. And in our White House, we got the reincarnation of Adolf Hitler. No doubt about it. And what's wrong with Americans and people in the rest of the world? Well, in the rest of the world, they're pretty upset about this. You could see a turnover of governments in Italy, Greece, Czechoslovakia, possibly Turkey, and a few other places over this. People are pretty upset. There are chinks in the NATO alliance. It's beginning to fall apart. But what about the American people? Have they all lost their minds? Are they insane? Are they stupid? Well, the answer to all of those is most probably yes, in my estimation. They don't think anymore. They listen to the Communist News Network. They form the opinion that they are told to form. And then, like a bunch of Pavlovian dogs, they begin to salivate on command. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Makes me sick. Makes me absolutely sick, ladies and gentlemen. And it should be making you sick too. But what's the reason for it all? Why is this happening? Why is it happening? Well, don't go away, because when I come back, I'm going to tell you why. I already told you, but I'm going to tell you again.
Supply minds with triglycerides to magnify your eyesight. I devise tight flows to sideswipe foes. Slow pokes with high hopes get broken egos. If your rhymes are dime, find the minds of spoken C notes. I seek and dispose of peeps with no souls. My own dome leaks the gold tone for gnomes cold splurging. Over homegrown beats, I'll stick it tighter than a virgin. I'm merging with the fat attracts the cataract surgeon.
Purging average whack words and phrases with the battle axe. My thinking burns and blazes like Mad Max. Beyond thunder, my dome is enlightening. Coming strong from underground, writing until it sounds tight. The chops, God, wanna fight me. Not likely I drop your squad like Spike Lee. You fraudulent, bite me. See this bro even slightly, not quite, but we got a P.O. box so you can write me. Fan letters, I heat it up better than damn sweaters. Veteran status, etc. fat as I wanna be. You know my trooper flow like the Schuylkill. My vision is quintuple. I take you as my pupil. See?
Who's the next nominee? Who's the next source of optometry? We drop rhymes to me. Open your eyes. Who's the next nominee? Source of optometry. We drop rhymes to me. Open your eyes. Just thinking out loud, so let it sink in unless you're blinking. The third eye, you heard why words fly with the best stinking raps on the side of the map. Now bitches finally decided to clap as ill beats and rhymes collided, collapse and cruise. Perhaps when you lose, defeated, realize, recognize the triad can't be depleted skill-wise. Second tries are useless, sipping juices, no getting stouts, lyrics spitting them out, no contest, we win the bout. I send out shouts to my mountain bros, projecting sounds thicker than chick sips and fricknicks. So hope you get the picture. Pick up the litter, I solicit digits from bitches. If it's an age, then I'm a hitter. Styles
to get down like midgets. Got the sick kids ill and in the house like quarantine. Only time the feast could see me's when I'm starving in a dream. Scarring retarded artists when I fart their heads. Yes, it's like you know you love it. My get tighter than the mice that's on the gloves fit. Homes are nicer, the rice mice, the intones. I'm fed up, shown up with so-so poems. The dead zone, you're hearing it, and I ain't hearing it like Kobe headphones. On my nuts you can't hang, so won't you let go?
Who's the next nominee? Some optometry. We drop rhymes to me. We drop third. Open your eyes. Who's the next nominee? Some optometry. We drop rhymes to me. We drop third. Open your eyes.
For true heads, I got tails, my rhymes is cryptic. I'm up and coming like a stiff Asian Pacific American. So bear witness like Harrison. I change around your clown's chromosomes till you get wannabe Down syndrome. I guess behind like slow class, Slimmy seem to dig me even if I'm skinny and got no edge. I'm clocking cold cash to chill money. You can't make a mountain from a hill, sonny. It's real, not brand.
With tan flesh, I manifest. The man is fresh, not from concentrate. Dumb nonsense, I hate the truth. Some contemplate, ain't trying to wait. I possess the power to speak it louder. Techniques get crazier. Amazing how I freak shit. It's secret like a tool, hidden in the birdcage. Read the words on the page, no bullshit. I'm the third sage of Wiseman. We fight since major lies been told. Eyes unfold, recite from page 5 in the scroll. Arrive with the soul of 10 men while I'm casting spells on weak MCs. Gasp and yell as they bask in hell. Ask yourselves what's the purpose if they became the greatest mimics using latest gimmicks for a day of fame. Who's the next nominee? Some optometry. We drop rhymes to be. Drop open your eyes. Who's the next nominee? Some optometry. We drop rhymes to be. Drop open your eyes. Who's the next nominee? Some optometry. We drop rhymes to be. Who's the next nominee? Some optometry. We drop rhymes to be. Open your eyes. Open your eyes. Who's the next nominee? Optometry. We drop rhymes to be. Open your eyes. 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 Open your eyes.
What's that song all about, folks? What's that song all about? Well, I know what it's about. I bet you, though, that not 10 people in the whole audience catches on to it. It's about hypocrisy. It's about people abandoning the traditional religions of this country. It's about turning your eyes away from evil and even joining it in order to be part of the crowd. It's the disease that's killing America. It is the disease that's killing America. Listen to me carefully, because you need to hear what I'm going to give you now. It's not a new disease, folks. It's not a new infection. In fact, the disease is as old as humanity. And the now rampant infection in our land is just about as old as this nation itself. But now, after over 2 centuries of its steady, exponentially compounding progress, it has grown to the point where our country's death is so imminent that many of us can now actually see exactly how its final moments of life will ultimately come to pass, if the current trend continues. Some think that this disease is known as tyranny, and would quickly point to its more recent vile dialectic, contrived and carefully controlled and manipulated manifestations. The Waco Massacre, the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building bombing, and now the Columbine High School killing spree in Littleton, Colorado, and the ultimate synthesis of such dialectic atrocities: always more and more tyranny, and always less and less liberty, all under the color in effect, the camouflage of law, and further disguised ostensibly as being necessary for such things as safety, security. The children are any other warm, fuzzy feeling ad infinitum, ad nauseum. Blah! It's sickening. After the United States government burned the Branch Davidians, including 17 little children, Janet Reno had the absolute audacity to go on national television and say, "We did it for the children. We did it for the children." And then William Jefferson Hitler parroted that phrase. "We did it for the children." No, you didn't, you stinking liars. You did it for the New World Order. You did it for the draconian legislation that you passed after you did it for the children that took away more of our liberties and freedoms, that infringed more and more upon the rights of the American people. That's why you did it. And everybody in this country knew it. But how many said anything about it? And why? Why, when there is such a multitude of government agencies with their swarms of officers so heavily armed and technologically equipped to so effectively harass our people and eat out their substance, would there even be the need by the despots and their henchmen to bother to tell us that their rampages of treason, murder, and other crimes is all in so many frivolous words for our own good? Why bother? Why bother indeed? Have you got a clue yet? The tyrants know exactly why they bother, and in fact go to enormous lengths in effort to do it. Think you might have an answer yet? I doubt it. But it's silly, isn't it? Isn't it silly? After all, the police will always get you if they're after you for anything, and they'll always win, and you'll always lose, right? Isn't that the constant theme that the myriad of cop shows on television are constantly hammering into the heads of millions of viewers every single day? And then this very theme is further supported, reinforced, and hammered home some more by all mainstream media in all forms, from comedy and other entertainment to educational shows and the news, right? And you'll also be certain to see exactly the very same slant in any mainstream newspaper and radio broadcast, too. You see, it's all been carefully and completely cut and dried. It took great effort, but all mainstream media is now firmly and totally in the hands of the despots. Why do you think I call them the communist news networks? And they took it all over precisely so that they can tell you that all their tyranny is for your own good. And in fact, thus advertise it to you along with the rest of the entire nation, right? But why? You got a clue yet? How about asking yourself, why, if the powers that be really have all this power, would they feel the need to advertise what they're doing to us as being for our own good? If they didn't somehow perceive that before they could be successful at not only what they're already getting away with, but also what they're planning to do to us next, that they needed to sell us the idea, and then they needed us to buy it before they could proceed. Now, do you think you might know the answer? I still doubt it. Wow. There are some very interesting, profound, and powerful ramifications here. In fact, such behavior by these tyrants would clearly indicate that the only way they can enslave us in their tyranny is if they first try to sell it to us and we in turn buy it. Or in other more familiar words, we give our consent. Oh, I bet you some lights are beginning to turn on now. I bet the wheels are turning now. How about that? Hey, how about that? You see, we cannot have tyranny unless we first give our consent, and the tyrants know it. Too bad so few of the rest of us know it. Huh? You see, the founders of this once great nation were profoundly aware of that fact when they so clearly stated that governments receive their powers from the consent of the governed when they wrote the Declaration of Independence. Now, do you know why I tell you to go read these documents, sheeple? The founders probably understood human nature better than any group of men collectively living at the same time, working together in the entire history of the world. They knew that it is a fact. And they clearly stated this fact in the Declaration of Independence when they wrote that governments receive their powers from the consent of the government. Should be governed. Let me say that again. Governments receive their powers from the consent of the governed. And so it is therefore also a cold, hard fact that people always get the government that they truly deserve. People always get the government that they truly deserve. It's a fact. No matter what form it may take, whether it's a monarchy, a dictatorship, constitutional republic, whether it be large or small, just or unjust, the cold, hard fact remains nevertheless that such a government, any human government at any level, could not, and in fact would not exist were it not first brought into existence by the consent of the governed. Nor would it ever be able to even continue, or change, or grow without their continued consent. A benevolent government could not become a despotism or a tyranny without the consent of the governed, especially in this country. You know where I'm going with this, don't you? Some of you might be getting a little glimmer, but I bet most of you still don't have a clue. Don't you think this is a bit strange? You might ask yourself why, if people always get the government that they truly deserve, would they ever choose tyranny? And then whimper and whine and moan and complain about its existence and its continuation? If government exists solely by the consent of, and therefore at the behest of the governed, which it most definitely does, why then would anyone ever consent to tyranny? Isn't that nuts? Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? Do you think we're a bunch of masochists? Do we enjoy seeing our freedom and our liberty eroded, withered, and trampled away right before our very eyes? You see, we all know what's happening. Do we really want to be enslaved, used, abused, manipulated, and then thrown away like so much human waste when we are deemed to no longer be of any further use to our masters? Do we desire such a fate for our children and for the future of our country? Is that what we really want? Because, ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly what we are really getting, and it's only getting worse all the time, while we continue to whimper, whine, moan, and complain about it, as we nonetheless continue to give our consent to it. Yet some of us are still fond of referring to the resulting tyranny as a disease, which it is not. You see, tyranny is a mere symptom of yet another symptom, our consent to it. Thus we consent to be sick with tyranny, and how stupid that is. How stupid! Because the sickness known as tyranny is killing our nation, but yet tyranny is only a symptom of still another symptom, our consent, and we haven't even reached the disease yet. Since it's now perfectly clear to all but the totally clueless, brain-dead, idiot, ignorant jerks that tyranny is a symptom and is therefore caused by something else, namely our consent to it, and this consent is also itself a symptom of yet something else, we would do well to learn what such consent is a symptom of. And if we can discover what it is that causes our consent to tyranny, we might yet find ourselves closer to the restoration of these United States, to the constitutional republic they were founded to be. This guaranteed to us in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution for the United States of America, in terms of a real solution, instead of all this whimpering and whining and moaning and complaining, which is so sadly nowadays often misconstrued as patriotism in the so-called patriot community, but is in reality nothing but so much more useless hot air, while our country continues to die. So just what is the cause for our consent to tyranny? Well, it's a lot easier to find the answer to that question by first asking what the basis is for our consent to tyranny. It's a big difference, you know. Since the vast majority of us do not enjoy or even like tyranny, yet consent to it, there must be some basis for such consent other than what we believe tyranny to be the happiest form of government we can live under. We all know that that's not true. So let's see. There must be some other reason. So let's look at a few. How about let me think. How about tyranny is the best government for keeping the children safe? Oh. But then we have to ask ourselves, what about the children at Mount Carmel Center in Waco? Or how about the millions of children who have powerful and dangerous mind-controlling drugs forced into them every day at their school? That can't be the reason. So how about, let me think of another one. How about, how about less crime? Less crime, that's it. But wait a minute. Even with this country incarcerating a greater percent of its people than any other nation in the entire world, and new prisons being built and springing up like weeds, the rate of violent crime still continues to escalate. And that doesn't even begin to address the completely unpunished crimes of badge-wearing Nazi jackbooted thugs. So that can't be it. Well, how How about the freebies? How about the freebies? How about that? Free public schools, free school lunches, free housing, free medicine, free food, free money, government entitlements up the wazoo. Oh, but what's this? If you actually work for a living as an actual contributor rather than a parasite, who are one of the bits of human excrement of the welfare state, whose only purpose in life is to be groomed by their masters for their part in yet another dialectic, and usually a violent one at that, to end their worthless existence, you've probably heard about something called Tax Freedom Day. You've all heard of that. Tax Freedom Day. It occurs sometime in the month of May. I don't remember the exact date, but sometime in the month of May, where it's said that after that date, you'd actually get to keep what you earn. Oh, you've got to be joking. It's called Tax Freedom Day. Tax Freedom Day. That's the day that they say that after that date, you'd actually get to keep what you earn. In other words, if all the taxes you pay for the year were to be paid in one lump sum, you'd be working from the first of the year until that particular date in May for all of your wages to pay only the taxes, nothing in your pocket. And that sounds to me exactly like all the days before Tax Freedom Day are in fact Tax Slavery Days. Tax Slavery Days. So darn. Thought I had it, but that can't be the reason for your consent either now, can it? Is that it? Don't tell me that's it. It can't be. In fact, aren't you kind of sick and tired? Aren't you just absolutely sick and tired while knowing right and wrong? That no matter how much of your hard-earned money is thrown ostensibly at our nation's many problems and woes, that things just keep getting worse anyway? Don't you, in fact, know, don't you know that what is being called our government isn't our government at all, having read the Constitution for the United States of America? You have read that, haven't you? Oh, my goodness gracious. Did I catch you on another one of those little technicalities? You have read it, haven't you? Oh, yes. Everything just keeps getting worse. No matter how much money you throw in there, no matter how much they take away from you, no matter how much liberty and freedom you give up, you know that what is being called our government isn't our government at all. Because you've all read the Constitution for the United States of America. That's the supreme law of the land. That defines the government, defines their powers, defines the chains put around the government to protect us and our rights. You did read the Constitution, didn't you? Well, if not, turn off your radio. Stop listening to this broadcast, because nothing else I'm going to tell you is going to make any sense if you haven't done that. So stop listening right now. Turn off your radio. Go get a copy of the Constitution. Read the entire thing. Read the entire Constitution for the United States of America. Right now, this very minute, you can always order this tape. And then you might have just the slightest chance of understanding everything else that I'm going to be talking to you about tonight. Maybe. For those of you who have read the Constitution and thus can no longer claim ignorance and can clearly see and know that the de facto government in this country is not the government defined and strictly limited in its power by the Constitution, what's your excuse for continuing to give your consent? What's your excuse? Don't talk to me about patriotism. You're a sheeple, and you damn well know it. Care to rationalize such shameful behavior while knowing right from wrong? Would you care to try and rationalize it? It's shameful what you're doing. and you know right from wrong. Care to explain it to your children? Would you care to sit down with your children right now and try to explain why you continue to give your consent to this tyranny? Explain it to your children, because you're going to leave them a world that's going to be much, much worse than the world they were born into because of your consent. Care to explain to your children why you're leaving them a future and perhaps even an entire legacy of tyranny and slavery where once there was one of freedom and liberty? Would you care to do that? If you do, would you please tape it? Send me a copy of that tape, because I want to hear it. I really want to hear it. I'll play it on the air. Edmund Burke, a member of Britain's Parliament in the 18th century, once said, and I quote, "The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing," end quote. And that is indeed true, but I'd like to add to that bit by saying, when good men and women do nothing, thus allowing evil to triumph, they cease to be good and in fact join the enemy by way of their consent to it by doing nothing. Let me read that to you again. I want to make sure it sinks in. You've been getting off the hook too long. You're guilty as hell, every single one of you. When good men and women do nothing, thus allowing evil to triumph, they cease to be good, and in fact join the enemy by way of their consent to it by doing nothing. So now, we're getting very close to the answer to why people who know better, nonetheless, give their consent to tyranny. Could it be that it's really because they've allowed themselves to be ruled by fear and are too afraid to do anything other than absolutely nothing? In other words, are they too afraid not to join the enemy's side? Because that is exactly what they have done. That's exactly what you have done. With a very few exceptions, every person listening to this broadcast has done it. Now, there's nothing wrong with fear or being afraid. It's a mechanism designed to help protect us from immediate personal danger. It remains a fact that those who give their consent on the basis of their fear are nothing but low-down, rotten, filthy, worthless, stinking cowards. Now we're getting somewhere. Because right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the real disease. The one and only cause for all tyranny. And that disease has a name. It has a name. It's called cowardice, and I'm talking to millions of cowards right now. Cowardice is the real disease. And you won't hear about this one from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention either. You see, they're too busy trying to convince idiots that gun ownership is the disease. Now that we've conclusively nailed down the real disease and tacked it firmly right to your forehead, and to know exactly what it is, it's time to address it head on, starting with some known characteristics of this deadly disease that we may better know our real enemy. You see, folks, this is why I've always told you, if you want to see what's wrong with America, go in your bathroom, close the door so that nobody else can see you crying, and look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. Now listen to me very carefully. These are some facts about the disease itself that you need to know. 1, cowardice is completely curable, but it will never cure itself. Sorry to shake you out of your lethargy, but you see, you have to do it. You're the only one that can do it. You have to cure the disease called cowardice. It has to come from within you. Number 2, left uncured, cowardice will always destroy lives. Cowardice will always destroy lives, whether by outright death or a suffering, lingering, agonizing existence worse than death, or both. Guaranteed without exception. And the lives that it destroys are not limited to only those of the cowards themselves, but affect many others as well, which is exactly why cowardice, when manipulated in the hands of an enemy, of a tyrant, is the ideal weapon for destroying an entire nation and enslaving an entire world. Number 3, anyone not properly immunized against it can, will, and most likely already has long since succumbed to cowardice. Number 4, anyone not properly and regularly reinforcing and renewing their immunization against it can, will, and probably already has succumbed to cowardice. Number 5, the primary deadly synergetic companions of cowardice are apathy, selfishness, laziness, ignorance, and gullibility. That is to say, cowardice can and does result in these other conditions, and these other conditions can and usually do result in an infection of cowardice. Number 6, cowardice is extremely contagious. It can be easily transmitted in almost any form from anyone to anyone, from a single person to an entire nation, or even the entire world. And it can be carried, sometimes even without the carrier being aware of it. Number 7, cowardice is extremely infectious. It instantly grows to dangerous levels in those infected, often within seconds after contact, and spreads like wildfire. Now let's talk about some facts about those who are infected with the disease, those called cowards. Cowards always clearly and chronically exhibit and embrace either any or all of the following characteristics: apathy, selfishness, laziness, ignorance, and gullibility. Cowards are always quick to excuse and or rationalize their cowardly behavior in any capacity, and this always results in their embracing a victim status mentality. Victim status mentality. Cowards will always forsake anything and anyone in favor of the course of action their cowardice is perceived to dictate. Cowards are constantly suffering great shame and other discomfort of the disease, and invariably seek what their cowardice appears to indicate to them to be a form of escape from pain. And this can take the form of anything from the aforementioned rationalization of their behavior to total immersion in any or all of such temporary diversions as alcohol, drugs, sex, television, video games, loud music, and of course, worship of their material possessions, in effect, mammon. Cowards, in truly misery loves company fashion, usually seek the companionship and always the approval and the consensus of other cowards, which may explain why they also often embrace the false notion of our constitutional republic being a democracy. But they feel inferior and even threatened in the presence of those more courageous than themselves. This usually results in the coward lashing out in some way, usually by nothing more than verbal means, name-calling, spreading rumors at those perceived to be more courageous than themselves. It's important that you understand this. Cowards feel inferior and even threatened in the presence of those more courageous than themselves, and this usually results in the coward lashing out in some way, usually by nothing more than verbal means, because remember, a coward is afraid. Cowards have absolutely no self-esteem. None. And they feel unimportant. They have an inferiority complex and usually engage in almost any kind of activity that will tend to make them seem or feel more important than they are. They have thoughts of suicide. But because of their victim mentality, it's far more likely that homicide will ultimately end their miserable existence. This makes them ideal human time bombs in the hands of psychopolitical dialectic manipulators. And cowards, in their vain efforts to obtain the appearance of self-esteem and importance, often resort to attempting to live their lives through those of others perceived to be more courageous than themselves. That's the reason that a lot of you listen to this broadcast. Often professional sports teams, athletes, and other heroes, whether fictional or actual, provide the theme. Another characteristic is that of gross exaggeration. For instance, a coward claiming to be a patriot will often resort to spreading mere rumors and even known lies in a vain effort to feel important. They will be the ones talking the loudest and the longest about, "When the chip hits the fan, I'll be in the front line with my rifle. You can count on me. I'll be right there. If anything ever happens to you, Bill, I'll be up there in a second." All the while, I know, and they know, they're lying. And you all know it too. Cowards, listen to me carefully, because this is what you had better understand. You'd better understand this right here and now. Cowards are members of the enemy force. Cowards are members of the enemy force. Cowards are members of the enemy force, so long as their condition remains uncured, and are until such time, in fact, a contingent of the enemy. Cowards are members of the enemy force. Cowards are members of the enemy force, so long as their condition remains uncured, and are until such time, in fact, a contingent of the enemy. You better understand that. So is there a cure? Is there a cure? Well, I think there is. So let's talk about some of the facts about the cure for the disease. We've identified the disease is called cowardice. It's killing our once free country. Even as you listen to this broadcast, we've identified some of the symptoms and characteristics of those suffering from the disease. And now comes the part about what to actually do about it. You see, I told you, in fact, number one, right at the beginning of this exhortation, cowardice is completely curable. That was number one. Cowardice is completely curable. And hopefully, after you hear this broadcast, you'll catch on to the idea of analyzing and, above all, questioning everything rather than blindly accepting anything at face value, even what I tell you, which is a behavior which in itself indicates gullibility. a synergetic companion of cowardice. You see, that's what that's all about. When you get a rumor from your neighbor and you pass it on without checking it, and you tell the one you pass it on to it's absolutely true, it's fact, or you get something over your fax machine, or you hear it on the Mark Kornke show, or on the Bobo Grit show, or somewhere else, and you just pass it on like it's hard, cold fact, and every one of you do that every day, makes me sick. That's called gullibility. It's a synergetic companion of cowardice. Cowardice. There's some simple analysis that will quickly turn up the answer and thus the cure. But the specific details of the cure, and this is where you have to listen to me very carefully, and if you don't believe this, keep listening. It might make some sense to you. The specific details of the cure come from God. While searching through God's Word, the Bible, for an answer, the words of Christ Jesus Himself in bright red letters gave me the answer. Listen carefully, folks. Don't turn off your radio yet. Even if you're a hardcore atheist or whatever you are, a Buddhist, I don't care. Listen to me carefully. In the Gospel of Mark, in chapter 5, a woman suffering from a plague touches the clothing of Jesus and is instantly healed. Jesus then asks, who touched him? And although the woman becomes very fearful, she nonetheless confesses to Jesus that it was she who touched his clothes, to which Jesus replied. Listen to me very carefully. This is what he said. Be not afraid, only believe. Be not afraid, only believe. Now, the profundity of that command is beyond measure. It states specifically the cure for cowardice, and following that command, whether you're a Christian or not, will completely cure cowardice. Following that command, whether you're a Christian or not, will completely cure cowardice. You see, the key is belief. For it is only that which each and every single one of us personally, truly believes that determines precisely how each and every single one of us personally behaves. The key is belief. For it is only that which each and every single one of us personally, truly believes that determines precisely how each and every single one of us personally behaves. And if you don't believe in anything, you have nothing to hold on to. You have no foundation. You have no guts. And so now comes the really ugly part. This is the worst part about this whole thing. This is the really ugly part. You have to take a good, long, hard look at the person whose image you see in your mirror. You have to take a good, long, hard look at the person whose image you see in your mirror for some serious soul searching and asking, what do I really believe in? What do I really believe in? And I'm here to tell you right now, if you don't believe in anything, you are nothing but an empty shell. An empty shell. You ever go to make breakfast and you pick up an egg and you crack it, there's nothing inside? That's you. That's you. Have you ever heard someone claim that although they've heard and perhaps even read that the so-called 16th Amendment was never ratified and is thus invalid, they are still confused as to what to do with regards to the outlaw Internal Revenue Service and their paying of the unlawful income tax? Yet those very same confused people always manage to make absolutely certain confusion notwithstanding, that they've carefully made out their check to the Internal Revenue Service and have them in the mail by April 15th, don't they? These are the same people that when you ask them to show you a law passed by Congress that requires them to file and pay the unconstitutional and unlawful income tax, they can't do it, have never been able to do it. That's because they're not confused at all, ladies and gentlemen. They are not confused at all. They're cowards, cowards, cowards. Cowards, pure and simple, and they're giving their money to the local bully only because they're afraid he might punch them if they don't. Is that how this nation was founded? Is that how we're going to keep this nation? By sucking up and kissing the butt of any Nazi jackbooted thug who demands us to stand and deliver? Knowing right from wrong, do you believe that such behavior is right or wrong? Now listen to me very carefully. You cannot serve two masters. It's either one or the other. And don't try to BS me. And if you BS yourself and believe your own BS, then you're sicker than anyone ever dreamed that you are. You see, because either you really believe in freedom or liberty, you really believe in freedom and liberty, you really believe in freedom and liberty, or you really don't. It's that simple. It's really that simple. You either believe in liberty and freedom, or you don't. That's all there is to it. If sucking up to criminals is of primary importance to you, then you really don't believe in freedom at all. You don't believe in it. You're a liar. You're a hypocrite. You're the worst kind of person that could possibly exist because you even try to convince yourself that you know better. If all your things, in effect, your so-called possessions are so important to you that whether right or wrong, you will do whatever anyone in power tells you to do because you believe that doing so will enable you to keep your things, then those things are the most important part of your life. More important than all of your self-respect, your self-esteem, dignity, honor, your so-called loved ones whom you don't love at all, your family, your friends, your neighbors, and your posterity. In other words, your country. And if such is the case, then don't even bother trying to pretend that it's not, for actions always speak much louder than lip service. You're not fooling anyone. You're not fooling anyone. But if, like those who founded this once great nation, your credo is, like me, live free or die, and liberty or death, and you actually truly believe that with all your heart, then and only then are you a real American. If the freedom, liberty, and the CQ, Monticello, Maine, USA. This is the hour of the time. I'm William Cooper. It's true, folks. If you're not, you don't believe it. That's why some Christians absolutely amaze me. They claim they believe in God. They claim that they believe in Jesus as their personal Savior. And then as soon as they get that out of their mouth, they say, I'd like to help you, but I'm afraid I'll get on somebody's list and they might come and kill me. You see, they lied to me. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in Jesus. They don't believe. They're liars. They are hypocrites. And the worst part of that is they're lying to themselves. And it doesn't just pertain to Christians. Somebody comes to me and tells me they're Jewish and they believe in God, and then in the same breath say there's no hereafter. When you die, you're dead and you rot in the ground and that's it. And I can't help you because I'm afraid to die. This is it. This is the whole ball of wax right here. If you believe in God, it can't be. It's impossible. So what he did is he convinced me that he didn't believe in God, that he was a hypocrite and a liar. I could go on right through every religion that there is. I know Mormons who tell me that when they die, they're going to have their own planet, and them and their wife are going to spend all eternity in spiritual intercourse populating their own planet with souls. They will be the gods of that planet. Really? Why aren't you helping me save this country for your children and your grandchildren? Oh, I might get on somebody's list, and they might come and get me, and I might get killed. Well, you see, they don't believe that either. They don't believe in their own religion. They don't believe the Mormon religion. Because if they really believed it, death would be their friend if they died fighting evil on the side of God. How about an atheist? If an atheist believes in liberty and freedom, and that's the ultimate accomplishment of humankind, is to be able to create that kind of an atmosphere where we can live in freedom responsibly without hurting each other, then he has to be willing to die for that. Even if dying means that's the end of everything. He might be surprised, but nevertheless, even if it means dying is the end of everything, because he has to do it for his children and his grandchildren and his wife and his mother and father and the people that he loves, so that they can have that ultimate achievement of mankind, so that they can live in that kind of a world. And when they tell me they're afraid that they might die defending that principle, I know they're lying to me. They don't believe it. They're hypocrites. They're liars. And of course, they're cowards. A man or a woman who firmly believes in something that they are ready and willing to die for at any given moment is invincible. And a whole nation of those people cannot be defeated by anything or anybody ever. It cannot happen. Have I convinced you of anything? Have I convinced you at least once and for all that cowardice kills? And do you sincerely desire to be free of its vile influence enough to actually do something about it this time? Well, here's how it's done, folks. Read everything you can about the once proud history of this country and thus learn of every real American's true heritage. Read. Actually read the Bible. Whether you believe in the divinity of the Word, whether you believe in the divinity of Jesus, whether you believe that any of the books of the Bible were divinely inspired, it is the history of the human race. And if you don't know anything about the history of the human race, you better start learning. Written by the people who lived at the time, not by some scholar 2,000 years later. It's important that you actually read the Bible. And this is just my own personal opinion. I would recommend that you start with the words in red. If you're not a Christian, then read the doctrine of the faith you claim. Listen to me. If you're not a Christian, then read the doctrine of the faith you claim. You'll never get through this fight without your Creator. But with your Creator, you can't lose. You'll never get through this fight if you don't believe in anything. You will never survive. But if you believe in something strong enough that you're willing to die for it, you cannot lose. You cannot lose. Read the Constitution for the United States of America. Read the Constitution for your state. Most of you never saw it in your life. Read the Declaration of Independence. It's the most inspiring document you may ever read. Read the Articles of Confederation. Read the Federalist Papers. Don't listen to what people tell you about the Founding Fathers. Read what they wrote. Read what they wrote. Listen to them. And remember, be not afraid, only believe. Be not afraid, only believe. Faith overcomes cowardice. That's why faith is important. Remember I told you in a broadcast of this show years ago, so long ago I don't remember how many years it was, but it was a long time ago. I told you that if there was no concept of God on this earth, man would have to invent God. Whether he believed in God or not, he would have to invent God and then invent that belief and then make it happen. Because man without faith, man without being subject to the law of a higher force, is Adolf Hitler. You see, everything becomes subjective under such a system. Which means that you revert to the law of the jungle. That's what Clinton's doing in Yugoslavia right now. So keep your faith strong. Keep your faith strong and don't ever let anyone dissuade or discourage you from making it stronger every single day. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, cowards have little, if any, faith. Their beliefs are virtually under the direct and total control of their masters, who as a result have become their owners by the coward's own consent. I withdrew my consent years and years ago. I drew the line in the sand. I may be the only free person in this entire nation because I refuse to give my consent. Learn to readily recognize whenever anyone attempts to infect you or anyone else with the disease known as cowardice and expose them for who and what they are and what they're doing and how they're doing it to the full light of day and for the whole world to see, and watch the cockroaches, watch those vermin scatter from the light. You see, these vermin are nothing more than terrorists. You want to see the real terrorists? Well, these vermin are nothing more than terrorists. They prey on human weakness. But once you know the truth, their schemes and scams become as transparent as just so much urine, and just as yellow, too. But with a far greater stench, exactly like their vile and filthy perpetrators. And also remember these easily observable facts about the enemy. You see, the despots themselves are even bigger cowards than those they seek to subjugate, and they pray every night that you never find that out. They wouldn't even think of attacking their targets with anything less than completely overwhelming odds and the utmost of brutality, which is why they must first totally disarm their victims before they even dare to have their way with them. Have you been listening to NATO lately? We won't send in ground forces until we know that there won't be any opposition. They're cowards. They know that the troops don't feel this little funny feeling in their chest. They don't get all shaky when the NATO flag marches by, or the United Nations flag. They do when the flag of the United States of America marches by. They might be willing to die for that flag, but who wants to die for the NATO flag? Who wants to die for the United Nations flag? Who? You see, These despots are even bigger cowards than those they seek to subjugate. That's why there's such a push in this country to disarm the American people. They cannot have their one-world totalitarian socialist government if Americans have guns in their hands. Because once they really get a taste of what they're in for, there's going to be civil war in this country. I've said it for years, and I'll keep saying it, and it will happen. There are just too many people like me who will not consent. Absolutely will not. Now listen to me carefully. These despots are neither omnipotent, omnipresent, nor are they infallible or wise. And there is a greater number of patriots than there is of the enemy. The only way the enemy can ever succeed is if you let them by being a coward and doing nothing. Although they presently control great power and material wealth, the enemy is morally destitute. Listen to me carefully. They are morally destitute, even going so far as to actually believe their own filthy lies and thus even deceive themselves. And since they proceed as though they are deified, whether or not they actually believe such false teachings of the mystery schools, they are nonetheless, as a result, without absolutes and are therefore as ships without rudders, and there are plenty of icebergs around. There are many more observable facts about this very real war for liberty which we find ourselves engaged in, but you should have the idea by now, and that idea is, be not afraid, only believe. Listen to me carefully. You were not created a coward. You don't have to be a coward. Quite the contrary. We've all been called to fight the good fight, not to allow evil to triumph by doing nothing. So what are you waiting for? If you already don't give your consent to tyranny, keep up the excellent work. You're a big part of what's right with America. If you have given your consent to tyranny, then take it right back. Withdraw your consent right now, this minute, for unless and until you do, you are exactly what's wrong with America. You are everything that's wrong with America. You are, in fact, part of the enemy force. If you are a coward, and after having heard how you can rid yourself of this deadly disease, you still refuse to do so, choosing instead to remain a coward and continuing to consent to tyranny, then you are a fool. You're a fool, for whom the best advice has already been provided long ago by Samuel Adams. Listen to this very carefully. If ye love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsels or your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that ye were our countrymen. The only way this country will ever return to being the land of the free is if it first and foremost returns to being the home of the brave. Be not afraid. Only believe. Never, ever forget it. Never, ever forget it. Not even for one single moment. Be not afraid, only believe. And never forget it, not even for one single solitary moment.
I got the blueberry, the cognac, the ice, the glass. I'm just feeling like a player tonight. Posted up with my nigga Sam Snead, you know. He got hoes from D-Town to Chi-Town, from my town to your town, and they all together with the better. You know, in a nine-nickel you gotta be ready for whatever. And you gotta always look and find that blueberry treasure, because it tends to brain boggle and make some lose focus on what they're trying to accomplish. But me, I just lay back and play the role of a pimp and let the game fall like dominoes, you know? Yes, indeed. Come on, Sam Snead. Give it to me, give me what you want.
I say what?
Sam Snead got the G-Funk.
When I said I hold my own, I wasn't frontin', never claimed to be the baddest with skills. I got a little something coming through, new clicking tracks. Known for making brothers recognize to put me on a map. Nothing can give me more pleasure to start this. I work the hardest, dug the farthest, making me illest, producing artists. Done crimes and ran for one time. Can catch me with my crew, bustin' rhymes up in the sunshine. State no case to fit, I've been with millionaires. Out to make a killing for reals, my resolution this year. Few places I walk, most imagine. New faces, I talk the beauty pageant. Past cuties now wanna do me, yo, I never forgot where I'm from. I check for family and every nigga who was down from day one. If you ain't speaking money language, I can hang with. Our conversation is weak, so it's senseless to speak.
Sam Snead, got them tracks that's potent like that bomb ring. Don't stop, young nigga. Pimp on.
Yeah, check it out. Now, I create beats every day. Plus I always seem to come with something fresh to say. Classics get produced, baby, I'm sitting on loop. Mad Jesus introduced, another hit that's masterminded. I'm behind it, listeners become prisoners, fit with band chronic. A business minded, perfect timing. Got simps kissing my diamonds, expensive dining. Satin sheets for bumping, grinding, need I spell it out. Give them my peep stories to tell about drones. They try to keep me in the zone, call me a sellout. Let no man come between my dreams. I'm from a hustler's genes, scrambled by means, so I don't fiend. Rumors that arise, I take them in the stride. Refuse to let some knucklehead get me 25 to life inside. So just accept a nigga that does it better. Sam Snead is super regulate the G-Funk era.
Straight up. You know what I'm saying? A lot of players try to imitate him.
That's right.
It's probably cause they hate him. I know they can't fake him. Sam Snead's in the house, come on. Sam Snead got the shit to make you jump out your seat. You better play. Sam Snead got the shit to make you jump out your seat. Sam Snead got the shit to make your neck break. Sam Snead got the shit to make your whole ache. Sam Snead got the shit to make your head ache. From the East Coast to the West Coast, which coast is the best coast? It don't matter. Cause it's so good, you know what I'm saying?
And here comes the best part, folks. I have been waiting since the beginning to tell you this. I want all you men to listen to me very carefully. All you men out there all over the world, listen to me carefully. What you just heard was written by Louise Rader, a woman. Why is it that the women are taking the lead in this fight? Remember what I told you about Linda Thompson when I went to Waco, Texas? The first time I ever laid eyes on Linda Thompson, she was standing in a parking lot, waving an AR-15 over her head, mustering her small little militia of 14 to try and save the Branch Davidians from the overwhelming force of tyranny. Why is it that Louise Rader wrote this and not Lieutenant Colonel James Bobo Gritz? Louise is a dear friend of mine. She's been listening to the Hour of the Time for many years. You've heard her. She's called in. And she wrote that. Except for, I can't read anything like this without putting my own 2 cents in, so there was a lot that you heard that was my own. But for the most part, this came from the pen of Louise Rader. The phones are open, 520-333-4578. We'll be taking your calls for the rest of the broadcast, which is about 30 more minutes until we have to do the shuffle off thing. 520-333-4578. Something like that sure puts the damper on you, doesn't it? Well, let's hear what you think about it. Are you going to... You're not going to wimp out now after hearing that, are you? If you do, then you're in big trouble. Really big trouble. 520-333-4578. Good evening. You're on the air.
Good evening, Bill. This is Nick from New York.
Hi, Nick.
Calling about the show, and it's amazing because I've talked to thousands of people, and most people, you're right, they hide their head in the sand, Some people are so fearful that they're even afraid for me to talk out loud. They wonder why I'm not afraid, And I tell them because, I'm an American, and I believe in God. So I have nothing to fear.
That's very good. I've actually had people who wanted to support me and help me, but didn't want to be seen with me.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's them. But I tell you, after talking to all of these people, I would say about 20% now, at different times, I hear from them, and they give me information, and they ask about certain things now. They become alert and aware. This is in New York City. This is a very difficult situation.
Yeah, that's the bastion of socialism.
Yeah, because we think we're so intellectually smart here and stuff like that, and we know it all,
Why is it that the intellectuals are always the first ones to march into tyranny and try to con everybody else into going with them, when history has shown that the first thing that tyranny does is execute all the intellectuals?
Well, I think it comes down to ignorance. Like I try to explain to people, the first thing I tell them that is, I'm ignorant. I might be less ignorant now than I was 5 years ago, but I am ignorant. They keep us so ignorant with the garbage that they spew out to us that, that is basically available to us.
Yeah.
And that I remind myself in the mirror at least 2-3 times a week when I shave, remember, you're ignorant.
That's a good time to do it.
Keep your mind open and stuff. And by telling them that I'm ignorant, I can explain to them how they are ignorant. It's not stupid, it's a lack of information.
Oh, no. Once you've been presented with the information and you continue to ignore it, that's stupid, my friend.
Right, that's what I mean. I mean, that because so many people that I talk to have no knowledge whatsoever, and I get them to, and I tell them at the end of the conversation, basically, I'm not telling you what to do, how to do it, be a militia, get a gun, do anything. I'm telling you one thing, keep your eyes and your ears open, think, read between the lines, see the lies. And if you do that...
That's the first step to building a militia. Believe it or not, it's true.
America and stuff when the shit hits the fan, and it's going to.
Yeah, but let's keep it clean. You can say bullshit. That has an entirely different meaning, but you can't say the last half of that word by itself on the air.
Okay. When the caca hits the fan.
There you go.
Okay. I just want to talk to you about one thing.
Isn't that hypocritical? Everybody knows what that means, but it's acceptable. It means exactly the same thing as the other word, but that's not acceptable.
I just want to talk to you about a little bit about Yugoslavia, some things that I picked up.
Go ahead.
My brother-in-law is Yugoslavian.
I want to ask you to talk louder, though, if you can.
My brother-in-law is Yugoslavian, and he lived there in the 60s, and I talked to another Yugoslavian person who lived there in the 70s. And some history that I checked into and stuff, well, there's always been feuding in that country. There's never been the mass bloodletting that has occurred. Never in its history like this. And
well, that's not true. When the Muslims tried to invade Europe through the Balkans, the Serbian people fought them viciously and were overcome and enslaved. And the Muslims actually killed millions of Serbs over the years, castrated them, made slaves out of them. Just absolute.
What year was this, though?
Pardon? That was back in the 1300s, I believe.
I meant basically like the current history, about 200 years.
Oh no, this history goes way back.
Right, no.
This friction between the Serbs and the Muslims is hundreds of years old.
No, that I understand back there, but because I was thinking about Marshal Tito when he, took over the country during World War II and after World War II. He brought a semblance of peace and unition, to that country.
Sure, that's because he made sure that everybody was treated properly, and anybody stepped out of line, got picked up real quick.
Right, but when you go through like 2-3 generations of this thing, and they were one of the most advanced countries in Europe, whether they were communist bloc, but from what I understand of the 2 Yugoslavian people I've talked to, he did not trust the West or the East, Marshal Tito.
Why should he?
And he protected his people and prepared for the worst from both sides.
Sure, well, he probably understood what was going on. See, the world was carved up by Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt at Yalta.
Well, I know that they talked to me about the Army, how he prepared the Army into small units so that they could defend themselves in case the leadership was taken out.
Let me tell you something. I have a map that was drawn up in 1942, I believe, 42 or 43. This map showed the disposition of countries, how they would be ruled and who they would be ruled by after the war. It even showed a new country in the Middle East called Hebrew Land.
Wow.
And this map is absolutely 100% correct down to the smallest nation, how it was divided up after the war. This map was drawn up in 1942 or 1943. I have to go get it out of my archives and take a look at the date to make sure. But it's 1942 or 1943. And this was long before the war ended.
You should put that in Veritas. I get that, and I'd love to see that.
Well, I can't because it's too big. We have to find some way to photograph it and bring it. I can do that if I had the right lighting and because I have a degree in photography, but it's a monumental task to do because it's a huge map. It's not some little thing that you get in the mail. This is a real big map. And it's in black and white, but it's a big map, just like a National Geographic map.
Did you possibly see or watch 60 Minutes last night?
No.
Okay, they showed something about the Serb atrocities. You addressed it.
How come they never show the Albanian or the KLA atrocities?
That's the thing, because if you watch this show, though, and you believe, if you think that it's a lie and you look for the lies, you could spot the lies in this show that were amazing.
Yeah, they are amazing. I didn't see it, but I've seen all the other stuff that they've been presenting, and I don't know why anybody continues to believe NATO. Every time they have denied something, they've been proven to be liars. Every single incident.
Such as, where are the photos of the human shields?
Where are the photos of the human shields? Where are the photos of the mass executions? Where are the photos of the mass execution graves? My God, we've got satellites up there that can read the writing on a pack of cigarettes.
Well, check this out. On the mass graves, that's part of what that story was about yesterday. They had 3 parts. But one part of it was some refugee said that there were 156 people killed. He was hiding in the woods. And then they came back after the Serbian police left, and they buried the bodies. And then they cut back to the studio, and they show a satellite picture of what looks like 3 rows of graves, approximately 156 graves. But nobody asked the question that, why would the Serbian people go back and bury their own people in a mass grave as opposed to their cemetery of that city?
You mean the Albanian people?
Right. I'm sorry. The Kosovars, right.
Yeah.
Why would they not take them to their own cemetery? Why would they just... dot after dot after dot.
I know. It's just absolutely insane. I'm going to let you go. We're going to let some other people in here.
Okay, God bless you, Bill. Take care.
You too. Thanks for calling. 520-333-45. I love it when somebody from New York calls. Because that is the bastion of socialism, I got to tell you. Good evening. You're on the air.
Bill,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Al from Grantsburg up in Wisconsin.
Hi, Al.
I did my homework on Socrates.
Good. Tell us all about it.
Well, I want to commend you for your show tonight.
Thank you.
It's excellent.
Thank you.
Well, Socrates.
But I think you should also commend Louise Rader because she's the one who wrote it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, I went to the library, and I got 3 sources. Now, one was an older encyclopedia, another one was a newer, and then the lady there was kind enough to go downstairs and look it up on that machine, that scope thing, the www dot thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I've had a few days to think, Bill. And he died as a martyr.
Yeah, what did he die of?
Well, he died of hemlock poisoning, but the ironic part of this was that back then there were only 2 people who, through their courts of the time, were accused and given the death penalty. And that was Jesus Christ and Socrates.
Yeah. What was Socrates accused of?
He was accused of trying to influence the children of his beliefs.
And how was he doing that?
Well, he didn't do any writings but he did it through his feelings and his inner beliefs of right and wrong. And that's what he went by. He got it through by knowledge of what he called of evil and good.
Yeah, and what specifically was he teaching the young people that made the government angry with him?
Well, I think, Bill, I don't really. I'm slow to learn it.
Well, that's okay. You've done good so far. Here's what he did.
Okay.
He taught the young people not to believe what they were told.
Right.
He taught them to ask questions.
Yes.
And the government could not stand in the light of questions, and so they arrested Socrates, tried him, and condemned him to death.
Absolutely.
And the death penalty was that he had to drink the hemlock himself.
There were 30 people around him that were followers of him. Plato was one of his
students, yes.
Right, his students. Now I'm going to get into reading a little bit about Plato too, because I think he would probably be able to tell me more about what he believed. That's what's interesting.
Yeah. So why do you think President Clinton called me the most dangerous radio host in America?
Well, because you are like him. You are a follower of Socrates.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I am extolling the teachings of Socrates on the radio worldwide, and the government cannot stand up to questioning.
Well, they can't. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. They can't stand the truth.
That's right. Because questions are what is required to discover the truth. You got it. You did your homework well.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
I am very proud of you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Have a beautiful evening.
You too. Thank you for calling. Thank you for doing your homework.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Most people don't do their homework. But you see what happens when you do your homework? When I give you a homework assignment and you do it, wonderful doors open up for you. And you begin to see and understand things that you never saw and understood before. But it never happens unless you do the homework. And what you should do, all of you, is when I assign homework to somebody else, you should do it too. How many of the rest of you went and looked up Socrates and his life and his death. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hello, Mr. Cooper. Listened to you for years. Had a couple of questions for you. First, I guess I was doing some research here. Actually, more just kind of listening to the BS media, as you call it, and I heard a thing about that Nostradamus was predicting like World War II in July, and I wanted to see if, from your opinion, this is related to like the mystery schools.
Well, in the first place, it's BS. Nostradamus wrote a whole bunch of what are called quatrains.
Yes.
And he wrote them in French. And no one has ever found the key to decipher the encoding of his quatrains. And so you can make them say whatever you want them to say. Nobody has ever figured the key to deciphering them. They were written in code, every single one of them. And so, they use Nostradamus, and they have even created this Nostradamus thing to manipulate people who believe in prophecy, that the future is fated to happen and you can't change it.
The other question I had was, I guess I was searching your website, as I've discovered like over the last couple of years, and I saw like you just have the most extensive website for just starting your own research and whatnot.
Well, that's why I built it, so that people would use it for research.
It's the most excellent resource I've ever seen for for us people that want to actually like you said for years and years, do your own research and come to your own conclusions instead of believing what other people tell you to believe.
Right.
And I guess I did come across something I found rather strange, I guess, in the last couple of days. It's called PGP Key. What can you tell me what that is? Because I clicked on it and it was like all this weird code and everything. I was like, what is this?
That's exactly what it is. It's an algorithm for encrypting messages, and if you use the highest algorithm, which is 4095, I believe it is, it's almost impossible. Well, it is absolutely impossible for anybody outside the National Security Agency to decipher your messages. And even the National Security Agency, it will take them quite a while to do it. But I guarantee you, wait a minute. I guarantee you, the National Security Agency can crack and read PGP messages. Anybody who doesn't believe that doesn't understand the money that's been put in to the cryptology department of the National Security Agency.
In what application would you use this, Mr. Cooper, I guess?
Sending secure messages that you don't want anybody else to read.
Like email, regular mail?
It depends. If you want to say something to somebody else you don't want anybody else to read, you had better use PGP.
Okay. Yeah, I just was curious about that because there wasn't really much explanation. I figured I must get an explanation from you to understand what it was.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's just it's a crypto code that you can use to send secure messages. But understand, everybody out there understand. The National Security Agency, if they want to read your messages, I don't care what you encrypt them with, that's their job. They will read it. If they want to. If they want to bother with it.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Cooper, and keep up the good work. I mean, what else are you here in Yuma, Colorado tonight? And I'll tell you what, you're just doing a wonderful job, and keep up the good work with your website and your radio show. There should be more out there like you.
Well, thank you. I wish there was. I could take a vacation.
All right. Good night.
Good night. Thanks for calling. 520-333-4578 is the number. Good evening. You're on the air.
William, I didn't get a ring.
Pardon?
I'd like to say thanks to Louise.
Well, great. I'm sure she's listening, and I'm sure that makes her very happy.
Yeah, I've felt her firebrand in the chat room there.
Oh yeah.
Haven't seen her in a while.
She's a patriot, and I'm sure when the fighting starts, you don't want to be on the battlefield opposite her.
Yeah, I'll indulge in a little regional pride, Bill. New York has its problems. I'm calling from New York, but I think the capital of socialism is in Washington D.C. in the Federal District. Or in any of these smaller towns that are based on a military base, or a place like Oklahoma City, where I understand 40% of the public there were employed by the federal government.
Well, I think it's more than that in Oklahoma City.
Incredible.
I think over 50% of everybody who lives in Oklahoma City is employed by the government in some capacity, either federal or state.
But your point's well taken. New York has its share of socialists, and particularly the ideologues of it.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, Nick, who called from New York, talking about the lies that are being told about Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
And I just read this piece in the New York Post. It was talking about a fella named Cody Shearer.
Yes.
This is the brother-in-law of Strobe Talbot.
I know.
One World Talbot.
Yeah.
Now, this Cody Shearer, his father wrote the Walter Scott's Personality Parade column in Parade magazine for many years.
Yes, he did.
Cody Shearer was involved with trying to get Democratic fundraising monies out of the Indians out in the Midwest, which Mr. Babbitt should have been removed from office for, but hasn't been.
Yep.
He's been working with Terry Lenzner, digging up dirt on politicians and other people.
That's how they.
But most incredibly, this Cody Shearer, who started this nice-sounding organization called the International Institute for Mediation and Conflict Resolution. Doesn't that sound nice?
What a joke that is.
Yeah,
He's a strong-arm man.
Exactly. Yeah. He was recently accused of engaging in secret peace negotiations with members of the Bosnian Serb government.
Yeah.
And so, imagine what the Serbian leadership...
He's also been accused of and identified as one of the people who has strong-armed and threatened some of the key witnesses against Clinton.
Right. Kathleen Welly, for example.
Yes.
She may have ID'd his photograph as being the guy who asked her about her children and inquired about her dead cat. But it's amazing.
And her slashed tires, and he's been ID'd by a couple of other people too.
Yeah, so I don't know what rock these people crawl out from under, but it's amazing. This was published on page 8 of the New York Post. I mean, it should be an outrage. It should be front page news in every newspaper in this country. It should be a top of the hour story on the
That's right.
Communist News Network.
That's right. But you will never see stories like that.
Because, Bill, you're absolutely right. They have obtained a stranglehold control. And mind you, the New York Post is part of that stranglehold control on the media. And it's amazing how this article was couched. They really shifted the bulk of the conversation about Shearer to Ms. Wiley. And it's amazing that they put out this disinformation, or they tell half the truth. But you nailed it on the head. Unless and until the American public become absolutely outraged that this kind of stuff is going on, that this can be printed in United States papers, and their fellow citizens don't become enraged, absolutely enraged, to think that we have a strong-arm guy, this Cody Shearer, who's not elected to anything, traveling around the world, bullying leaders of other nations.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
And they keep talking about this great new world order that's going to bring democracy to the world, and yet the United Nations doesn't have one single official that's elected by anybody?
Yeah, it's amazing. Amazing.
It's absolutely insane.
Well, Bill, I'm outraged, and by God, I hope some other people become outraged.
Me three.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks for calling. 520-333-4578 is the number. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hello, Bill.
Yes.
This is Jeffrey from New Orleans.
Hi, Jeffrey. I just got a letter from you today with some tapes in it.
That's right. You got, and I came through last week. One of them is, well, you can look them over because one of them is on the Venona papers, and the other is the And I think you'll find them interesting, but I came up with a couple of news reports today.
Oh, did you know that the protocols of the wise men of Zion
the protocols of the elders of Zion
are printed in my book?
Right. and of course, the History Channel came up with a program on them.
I was the only man in modern time who had the guts to print them.
Well, of course, they're saying that it's a fraud and that it goes back to a couple of sources.
No,
but that's the reason I sent it to you, so you could see what the History Channel was saying about them.
Yeah, well, it's no fraud at all, and anybody who reads the protocols will understand that that is the blueprint for the New World Order, and they have been following it word for word, absolutely, and it's absolutely incredible. And they have pinned anti-Semitic on anybody who reads them or talks about them, so that everybody's afraid to read them, and so no one understands this. If they would just sit down and read them, they would discover right away, and they would be able to look at the events happening in the world and see that they're following this plan to the letter.
That's correct.
To the absolute letter. And it has nothing to do with Jews or Judaism. It has everything to do with the people who are putting together one world government.
And speaking of that, I had a report that broke 11:35 Central Time on the Joseph Farah News Hour today. Guess who is the man who backed Barak, who's the new Prime Minister of Israel, and manipulated his campaign?
Who?
James Carville.
Oh, no.
I'm not kidding.
Oh, I can't stand it. Oh, no. I'm going to pull my hair out, what little is left. Oh, my God.
I know, but you can see how the Israeli election was. And the whole point is that once again we're seeing the New World Order manipulating in the Middle East and setting up its attempt to bring about its division of Jerusalem, etc., etc.
Well, remember, I told you when Netanyahu sabotaged the peace accords and tried to sabotage Clinton with the Monica Lewinsky thing.
That's correct.
Because that's exactly where it came from. The whole Lewinsky thing was set up by Israeli agents and international Zionism. I told you that Netanyahu was history. I said it on this broadcast, that Netanyahu was history, and he sabotaged the New World Order.
Right, and of course the biggest crime in that election was Benny Bacon dropping out, the so-called rightist dropping out at the last minute. Somebody got to him.
Well, somebody's been getting to a lot of people lately. Remember the senators?
No, you better believe it. I know about that. And look at how the GOP caved in on the gun issue last week.
Yeah, after refusing to pass the gun control issue on gun shows, the next day, nobody came and introduced anything. They came in, white as a sheet, scared to death, and backtracked on everything. Somebody got to them that night.
Of course. And it's the same thing with that Senate all over the place. Well, I'll let you go, Bill, but there's one other thing I wanted to point out. The BBC conducted an interview with one of those Serbian prisoners of war who was being released today. And the prisoner said, and I'm quoting his exact words, "I helped kill Albanians and bury them in mass graves." This happened 2 weeks ago in an interview with the BBC. Now, that doesn't excuse Clinton for what he's doing. Remember that. But I have to point this out
that doesn't mean that what he said is true either. Remember, he's a prisoner.
True, but in order for the other side, for our enemies, to make things real, they have to do something. They have to contribute some of this to the problem in order to make you support what they're trying to bring about. And that's all I have to say on the issue.
Oh, sure. They've been trying that every single day. And most people believe every word that they say.
And they don't look at all the sides of the picture, and they don't look at the ramifications of what NATO is trying to bring about either, which is world government. Yeah. Well, I'll let you go and let other people get on the act.
That's true. Thanks for calling, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Yeah, for those of you out there who think it's the Jews, watch what's going to happen to Israel. There's going to be peace in the Middle East. They're going to make a Palestinian state. Israel is going to give up some of its territory. And if Israel refuses, they're going to bomb Israel just like they're bombing Yugoslavia. So get this Jew shit, crap, junk, baloney out of your head. It's not true. You understand? It's not true, folks. The Illuminati is made up of a lot of different people, all pretending to be a lot of different religions and political, viewpoints and stances and everything else. And you better understand that. George Bush is a member of the Illuminati. George Bush is not Jewish. George Bush has helped bringing about the New World Order. George Bush is not Jewish. Bill Clinton is not Jewish. He's helping bring about the New World Order. Tony Blair is not Jewish. He's helping to bring about the New World Order. And I could go on and on and on. Jerry Falwell's another one. So is Pat Robertson. You watch. If you don't believe me, you just watch. And understand. The Jewish people are manipulated to help this along. I can tell you that for a fact. They are probably the easiest group of people in the world to manipulate. All you have to do is say the word Holocaust. So, I guess that ought to just about get you. Oh, I bet there's some people out there seething tonight. I bet they are just seething, boiling, because of what I've said on this broadcast tonight. And, folks, you better understand, this is not a video game. This is for real. We're about to lose it all because of a nation of cowards. Good night, folks. And cowards or not, God bless you. Each and every single one of you.
Woke up one morning out some bomb-ass cock. My dick kinda limp, so I cruise around the block. Call my cousin Snoop as I swoop in the coupe. Stop by my homie Blue House to puff on the loop. See my little homie Style, who I ain't seen in a while. Damn, they gon' floatin' on cloud 19. Liquor store, so I grab some mixed gin and juice. Got a quarter pound of bud, so I'm fucked up 2, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Bail back in the crib because I'm all in. Conversated, then I dug that hoe out. I fixed me some food and bone the hell out. 2 a.m. on the dizzy, I pause and I stiz out. I reminisce on that ass that I rizz out. Now I'm high as a kite, yeah, and I'm feeling alright. 4 a.m. as I stroll back to my crib to see what's with my woman and my newborn kid.
With my mind on my money and my money on my mind. We do this every day about the same time.
I was at the park one day. That's when I saw her face. She looked kinda catty to me. But when I take her home and tap that ass, I'm gone. I'm just a dog, don't blame me.
Now do I love them hoes?
Hell no.
And why is that?
Because you're Snoop Dogg, your dog. And you never give a fuck about a bitch. Cause to you, bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks.
Dee-dee-da-dee-da. Listen to the sounds from my nigga Doggy Dog. Sliding through the city in the rank 6'4". Hopping like a motherfucker trying to find a hoe. Hitting all the spots, but I'm coming up blank. I'm headed to the liquor store to get myself some drink. Parks my ride as I steps inside. As I puts my 9 double limb to my side. As I continue with my mission. Pussy is my dish and ambition. Wishing upon the star to come up on some ends, pushing caviar and a little bit of pussy. If I can get my pimp on, cause my pen gets my pimp on from G to Ozone.
I put my pen on cold Michigan nights, and the bitch didn't freeze up on me when I wanted her to write. I have put my pen in the hot California sun, and the bitch didn't drip, smear or run as she turned the trick pages from loose leaf to zigzags. I have pimped my pen and she is number 1 in my stable, for I have yet not got a refill for her. I love her, that's why she keeps performing for me. I have pimped my pen and she is number 1 in my stable. Pleasure,
is the treasure that the girl sells all day. Pleasure's the reason that she brings daddy his pay. Dedicated the hoe, dedicated for show. Dripping willows on satin pillows. Love is being checked from a hoe. Dead presidents still giving their fuck on. I'm so happy because ain't nothing like a lollipop that gets sucked all day long. A tangy little candy drop. I love it when she brings me the pay. Dedicated like every day to the sunshine. Yeah, my hoe brings me mine. For life she said she'd do it, and I believed her when I accepted. Yeah, I got pimp bones in my body.